What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today, we are going to be talking about the season premiere of Season 2 of Deep Space Nine. I can't believe we're already here. We're going to be talking about the homecoming. Mike, it's a homecoming for you. You are back in your regular studio. We actually recorded this episode already, but the Rode Studio did not save it. So get ready for some leftovers for us, but it's new to you. How's it going, Mike?
It's going great. I'm so excited to be home. I missed my studio. I missed my comfy chair. The worst part about that, aside from the donkeys, which were very pleasant, was the chair I was sitting on was just so uncomfortable. And so the thought of having to redo this episode when it didn't save was an absolute misery. So I'm so happy to redo it from the luxury of my own home and having thought about the episode a little bit more. Will it change our opinions? Probably not, but at least it was long enough ago that I've forgotten.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, it might change our opinions, but Lord knows we won't remember them. So that part of it will be new to us. But we are excited to be here in Season 2 of Deep Space Nine. It's funny, I'm beginning Season 2, and I've been having some thoughts about Season 2. I'm looking ahead into what is going to be on our plate over the next few weeks. And Season 2 is better than Season 1, but there's still going to be some sequences where we're going to grind a little bit. But don't worry, because at the end of Season 2 is going to be the shift, is going to be the turn.
Okay.
That things will never be the same after the end of Season 2. So, but here we are. I'm excited to get into it, and I'm also excited to tell you about our Patreon.
Yes.
You can find it at patreon.com/KM. And on there, you're going to have all sorts of really fun bonus materials, including allowing yourself to watch Mike watch Deep Space Nine. That is our big ticket item. That is our big one. It's very exciting. We also have bonus episodes, which we know we owe you, and we're going to do some more. We're going to do some AMAs. And on top of that, I have now discussed it. It's official. It's going to happen. We are going to interview my brother, the Emmy-nominated sound effects designer on Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise. We are going to talk about his career and his life. And then, perhaps just for the patrons, we are going to start breaking down some of the iconic sounds that he developed himself, including a lot of sounds that were recorded on my family's property. Including the sound of every time you hear the Starship Voyager get hit and rumble or whatever. I can tell you how that sound got made, and it got made in my childhood backyard. So lots of fun stuff to talk about there. So check it out at patreon.com/KM. Mike, who are our patrons at the moment?
So glad you asked. Brian Kaufman, Casey Clark, Cloudlover69, Jorge Navoa, and the mysterious Alan Zimmerman, CRM Productions, Charles Babbage, Kyle Sweeney, and a couple of other folks still paying us over on the Anchor platform for our old podcast that is dead.
It's not dead. Well, the Out of Practice podcast about David E. Kelly's award-winning series, The Practice, it is not dead. It is now just archived.
Yes.
So you can listen to us discuss that show for quite literally countless
sometimes
hours.
You stumble upon a great show, you're watching it, and you realize they canceled it in Season 2 and it just never finished, and you're like, oh, you feel all incomplete. This one, folks, it goes the whole way. And guess what? If you're not interested, just jump right to the finale. Keith wrote a musical, and it's worth listening to.
It's really something, and it is also proof to those people watching or listening to this. We're going to get to the end of this. We are not the type of people who get a season and a half in and nobody's listening. We didn't let nobody listening stop us from continuing the Out of Practice podcast.
No, we did not.
So we will finish this, whether you're listening or not. So, Mike, what do you say? We talk a little bit about the homecoming.
Yes.
I'm excited about it. So, first off, let us discuss when this aired. This aired on September 26, 1993. We had the summer off. between seasons, and I was beginning 7th grade. It was a terrible, terrible year, but at least I had Star Trek to come back to, which I very much appreciated. The top song, Mike, have you warmed up? Have you done your vocalises?
Yes, I have. Me, dee, 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 doo, doo,
Thank you,
doo,
thank
doo,
you.
doo. Okay, I'm feeling good.
Okay, great. Well, you're going to be singing for us today Mariah Carey's Dream Lover.
Oh no. I can't hear myself. I can't hear myself. I'm walking off the stage. Something like that. Did I get the diva right?
I don't know what happened there, but I think we all could appreciate it. And just because I think we should do another little piece of information here for season 2, and that is what else is going on in Trek. The day before this aired, Liaisons of the Next Generation aired. So on a diplomatic mission, Worf, Troy, and the captain deal with 3 aliens who explore foreign concepts with extreme singular focus. So I think it's important context, right? Because I was definitely watching both of these at the same time. I also might have been watching the top movie on September 26, 1993, which was The Good Son, starring Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood. I think it was some sort of like evil Macaulay Culkin at this point. They wanted to, he was such a giant star after Home Alone. They're like, let's make him evil, I think. But I don't particularly remember. The New York Times headline talked about a Russian says Soviet atomic arsenal was larger than the West estimated. This was right after the fall of the Soviet Union, or at least within 5 years of that. And they were discovering, oh, wow, yeah, they had a much bigger capabilities than we in the West knew at that point. Can't imagine how that might play out again.
Seems to track, yeah.
Yeah. So, The Homecoming was directed by Weinrich Colby, who last directed Vortex. It has a teleplay by Ira Stephen Bear and a story by Ira Stephen Bear and Jerry Taylor. Of course, Ira Stephen Bear, eventual showrunner of Deep Space Nine, very important to the run of the show. And Jerry Taylor is very important as one of the creators of Star Trek Voyager, which they were already beginning to spec out at this point, but had not started casting yet. So a lot of big Star Trek minds on this episode. You want to know what else is big and important?
I do.
Are very important trivial trivia, Mike.
Oh, Keith, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Now, Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia.
Okay. Well, first off, we have a pretty big guest star. Frank Langella is here as an uncredited actor at his own request. He says he did the show for his kids and not for money or fame. And
uncredited and uncanceled.
Pre-canceled.
Yeah.
Pre-canceled at this point. Netflix had not fired him yet because Netflix did not exist. But anyway, so that was happening. Also, in terms of crediting, which I think is interesting, Mark Alimo now gets credited with his character name, which is a distinction that most of the major recurring characters would eventually get, but he was the first one to get it. As Gul Dukat. Also, the canyon that they shot in here, the whole rescue and battle scene, would also be a setting for several more important episodes. Apparently, it was miserable to film in because it was crazy hot. But as we will talk about when we talk about the episode, what it did for the production values to actually go out into the world and go into this canyon and shoot both literally and figuratively made a big difference. And we'll see it again on some very iconic episodes of Deep Space Nine. And lastly, Michael Piller, the showrunner at the time, tasked the writers of season 2 to focus more on unique Deep Space Nine stories, as opposed to trying to have as many ties with the Next Generation as possible. So which of course makes sense. You've gotten through your first season. I don't think the ratings were as big as Next Gen yet, obviously, but they were certainly solid enough. They were going into season 2, and they were, it's time to take the training wheels off and start telling some more specific stories, which I thought was great. So the guest stars this week included, of course, Mark Alimo as Dukat, Max Grodenchik as Rom, Michael Bell as Borum, who will do 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, and he is also Zorn in the Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot of The Next Generation,
also,
Michael.
what we do to our listeners every week.
Zorn?
No, his last name, Borum?
Oh. So, if we bore him enough, they might snorm.
Wow. I can't believe that you met my challenge and exceeded it. So well done.
There was a low bar, and boy, did I get under it.
Yeah.
I just dove under the standards of that. Other guest stars, Frank Langella, of course, as we mentioned, as Minister Jaro, who was an Oscar nominee for Frost Nixon. He was also Skeletor in Masters of the Universe. And, of course, Richard Bamer as Lee Nollis. Now, Mike, I asked you this the first time. Now I'm going to ask you again and see if you remember, because we did all of this. What is Richard Bamer famous for?
It's a movie that I should remember.
Mm-hmm.
A horror movie.
Do?
A horror movie.
No.
TV
what do
show.
we do for a living?
Yeah, we act.
What is our
Famous Broadway
occupation?
show.
Yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say Nurse Ratched but that's trivia from a couple weeks ago.
Michael, we are musical theater performers and writers.
Uh-huh.
And he has a very famous musical theater tie-in, which I told you about.
You gave me a clue before, and it helped.
Multiple times. I think the clue was I just told you what he was.
I can't believe that I can believe that I've completely forgotten, but I can't believe that I've completely forgotten a second time.
Well, Mike, something's coming.
He was the original Tony in West Side Story, the movie.
There you go. Well played.
Wow.
Well, that was time everyone spent. Hope we didn't bore them. Okay, what do you say?
Nailed it the second time. Nailed it.
This is the second time we recorded this episode. All right, well, what do you say we go into our screening room and talk about this episode? Mike, sing us in. Okay, folks, here we are in Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 1, The Homecoming. And we begin our teaser showing off all these happy aliens at Quarks. We sort of zoom through the set a little bit. We see all the extras and all the cool alien effects, and it feels a little bit like a celebratory way to begin Season 2. Like, hey, check it out. We're here. We're happy. We're doing it. Very similar to the beginning of Season 2 of Next Generation. They sort of began, I think it was The Gift, where they just started with some just cool heroic music and shots of the ship flying around. I think it was a little bit of like, we made it to Season 2. I can't believe it. Let's celebrate a little bit.
I wanted to ask you, Keith, and I forgot to do it last week, because of just the machinations of how I'm trying to capture the screenshots and everything, I am not watching this on Discovery Plus. Or no, what? Not Discovery Plus.
Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus. I'm watching a ripped copy. But I did notice a distinct saturation and color difference between Season 1 and 2. I don't know if that's just the way I acquired it or if it was noticeable on the feed as well. Because it seemed like it was definitely the clarity was better and the color seemed a little deeper.
I don't think on Paramount Plus there's a huge amount of difference there. It was probably the rip.
Okay.
But certainly the color and clarity of Deep Space Nine is something that us fans really think a lot about wishing, hoping, praying for the remaster, the HD remaster that the original series and next gen got.
Did it kick into HD at any point during the run?
No, it never did. This was well before HD, and however, as was true of all the original Star Trek series, it was shot on film, on 35 millimeter film. So it is definitely possible to go back in there, rescan it, and redo it. But it's an enormous, painstaking process that cost a lot of money, and they did it for next gen, and it's glorious, it's beautiful. They had to redo a lot of the effects because the effects were done on video after it had been taken off of the film. So they had to sort of redo them in the style of. So, and they had to literally go back in the archives and recut, figure out every single frame, cut it again, edit it again, and post-process all of it again. So enormous amount of work. And they thought, oh, we're going to make all of this money, though, because we're going to sell the Blu-rays, and it's going to be great. Well, by the time they finished it, they were 3, 2, 1. Nobody does even Blu-rays anymore. The physical medium is dead. So that's why they haven't done the rest of them, because they didn't make any money on it. And I think, though, that obviously it would be so much better to go back and remaster the whole thing right from the original negatives. But at the very least, people are doing AI upgrading just off of this original footage at home on their computers. Paramount Plus can't just like run their files through this program and at least give us that. It's obviously never going to be the same, but like it can be a little better than this. I could do it myself here on this computer. So anyway, that was a very long discussion staring here at Quark. Well, we're still in the teaser. We haven't even gotten anywhere. So we begin with Odo and Quark flirting as usual, but this time Odo is suspicious because some of the information that Quark gave him, it actually panned out, and Quark told the truth. So that's weird. And after he leaves, Rom is also confused, and Quark tells him the 76th rule of acquisition. Mike, do you remember the 76th rule of acquisition?
You got to throw a bone to your buddies because it throws them off.
Sort of. If you go into the actual original text, as a textualist we are here, it's every once in a while declare peace. It confuses the hell out of your enemies. So cute little beat there. Then Quark heads upstairs and runs into a leather pants alien lady, and he wants to give her a black hole, but instead she gives him an earring that he needs to get to Bajor, and shows it's a Bajoran earring that she got from a Cardassian, and it's important. And I'm immediately suspicious. I mean, look at that costume design.
So good.
There's a lot going on there. The purple hair. I always thought about that. The hair color on our alien creatures are rarely purple or orange or blue or something interesting. And I think there's a little bit of an earthism going on there where all the hair color tones are sort of in our palette. But I feel like that's cool. That's a cool look. It's a cool alien.
I was actually kind of hoping to see more of this character.
I think Quark was too.
He might have already. I mean, it seems like they had some sort of history. So, but we don't. We don't. Thank you for your time. She looks a little bit like the Predator, no?
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah. She looks like a Predator at least.
Yeah, a Predator, but, like hot.
Like hot Predator. Here, you heard it first. Hashtag Mike wants hot Predator.
Hunt this. Am I right?
No. Anyway, so she gives him an earring suspiciously for free. It just said, here, take this. Quark, suspiciously, again, takes it straight to Kira, who is praying in her quarters. They also spar and flirt, but then Quark shows her the earring.
Wait, hold on. I wanted to point this out. If we zoom up a little bit on the screenshot here, look at that. Kira, even in the future, got a smallpox vaccine.
Well, it's important. Mm-hmm. And apparently enough of us chose not to take the smallpox vaccine in our current day, so they had to keep vaccinating for it because we couldn't
Interesting.
eradicate it because America. So she recognizes the earring immediately and wants to know where Quark got it. And she takes it from him and runs off. And that is the end of our teaser.
Well, that's also after he's a little forward and like tries to peek at her naughty bits, and she's like, "No, I'm just putting on a sweatshirt."
Yeah, because she definitely she went into a dressing room to put on a sweatshirt. Yeah, literally to put on a sweater. She didn't change anything else. She just put her coat on. But whatever. I wouldn't want Quark peeping at anything anywhere. But there you can see the Bajoran earring. It's a great prop. Like that would be a good, if you were a collector, it'd be a good prop to have.
Yeah, you can tell when they're proud of a prop because you get that nice close up.
Nice close up, and you can see that Armin Shimmerman had to put on that greenish bluish nail polish every time. I wonder how often he actually put it on, because obviously this is a hero hand shot. You're gonna do it, but for most scenes, did they bother with that?
Well,
Chances are they did.
Yeah, I think so. We did black nail polish for the Addams Family, and I have to say, Keith, it's a pain in the butt to have to continually reapply it, but fringe benefit. I bite the hell out of my nails, but I stopped. I broke the habit.
Oh, how about that?
I came back with nails.
Wow, congratulations. See, we're all growing here on Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine.
I'll grow some more if you bring in that hot predator again.
Ooh, there you go. So in Act 1, Jake tracks down his father on the promenade, and he has news, and he's excited. He's asked a girl out, and she said yes. And he's asking his dad for advice on what to do. He wants to take her to the holosuite.
Hell no.
Sisko's like, hell no. And he's like, what if we just go to our quarters? And he's like, hell no again. And they have a cute father-son talk. And it's sort of, Sisko's like, I don't think you're ready for that. And Jake's like, I don't think you're ready for me to be dating. I think it's just a great beat. It's a great beat for their relationship, for the father-sonness of it. It felt very human, and it feels like an interaction we've always had. I'm assuming, Mike, you had rules about where the ladies could be.
Nobody upstairs, and we were allowed down the basement, even though there was never any supervision in the basement. So you could enjoy private time in the basement. However, my dad was a weird kind of cat, and we didn't have a door on our basement. Covering the basement was a wrought iron gate, like a freaking castle, so that you could see down there and you could hear down there, so you couldn't get full privacy in the basement.
Wow. Sneaking around in the shadows. Well, I prevented that by having no girls like me. So no worries. Be in the basement, be upstairs, go to the holosuites. Who cares?
Well, this brings up a conversation we had early in our podcast, Keith, and I bring it to you again, and I bring it to our audience again. So on Deep Space Nine, then there must be like a movie theater, right? Is that still a thing? Are there still theater? Because you would think that now, even with Oculus virtual reality, you realize that you probably would go to the holosuites to like catch a film to get the theater experience, like an old movie theater, or you would probably go and watch a baseball game or an old relive a World Series game in the holosuites. So if you take the holosuites out of the equation, what is there to do recreation? Like, would you go? Why would the expense of building a bowling alley in Deep Space Nine be more or less than just recreating one in a holosuite?
Well, I think the issue would be the holosuites themselves are very expensive to build, and they require a lot of energy. So you just don't have enough of them for everybody to use. I think if they had enough energy and money and resources to create them, I mean, you got half that station is giant. So you could just make 400 holosuites if you wanted to, but that was never sort of an option. In terms of watching movies, I think we sort of learned this, and a lot of it is we get this from Voyager, is that the concept of just sitting and watching a narrative film it feels like child's play to people in that time period. They want to go to the holosuite or the holodeck and have it be interactive. They want to play a character. They don't want like just watching somebody do something is like us listening to a radio play. And
Yeah,
I
it
think
makes
that
sense.
that's sort of where they're at. So anyway, I want a holosuite, but I don't have one. So after that, Kira arrives, and Kira and Cisco head to the Replimat for Roctagino and an Eichelberry tort. Mike, do you remember what Roctagino is?
No, I feel like it's something we do in Philly when we're hungry. We rock over to Gino's and get a cheesesteak with.
Yeah, I go to Pat's.
Actually,
I
go to
I
neither.
forget which one I like
Neither
best.
of those. You should go to John's, or you should go. There's plenty of other places. Angelo's. Come on.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Deep cut for Philly, folks. But no, Roctagino is Klingon coffee.
Oh yes, you're right. Rock the Gino. They like
Well,
that coffee. Okay, I'm firing up now. I'm finally getting up to speed.
Mike is starting to cook. Well, great. Well, enjoy that world. So we see the new Replimat set. They've done some cool lighting gizmos, and you can see that you've got sort of the bubble effect going on, and it's a new set. So I don't know if we've talked about it, but the on the Deep Space Nine promenade ring, because obviously it's the promenade is supposed to be a full circle, which is the inner circle on the on if you see the Deep Space Nine from the outside. They built a third of it for the actual set, but as the series progressed, they built out more and more pieces of it. So this was a new piece that they built for season 2, the Replimat set. So all of these cool lights, and so we find an excuse to go hang out on the new piece of set, which is why in so many ways, as this series goes on, it starts to feel more and more real and more lived in. And part of that is the storytelling and the characters, but also the set itself is filling out, and they're filling in the details, and that's great. So Kira wants to borrow a runabout. Words. Kira wants to borrow a runabout, but doesn't want to say why. She says,
Well,
she's
Keith,
heading to...
that is what I want to do with the Lady Predator. Run and mount.
Gross. Gross. That's terrible. What? I want to know. In Mike's head, the wheels are turning, and they're like, "This is I've come up with something to say." Right. So the first part of the wheel is
I stand by it. I stand by it.
I've come up with this. Then there's a second thought process, like, should I say this? And Mike's like, hell yeah. This is something I want on the internet.
Go on. It's like that scene in the holosuites with what's his name? Michael Dorn and the lady Klingon. Worf and the lady Klingon. That's what I'm picturing.
And Kalar, yes. Yeah. And on the Next Generation.
I'm sorry. Keith, continue.
Oh my God, where was I? Okay, so Kira doesn't want to say why she wants to run about. Then she immediately says that she's headed to Cardassia 4 to rescue a Bajoran prisoner of war. And she explains that the earring that she found, or that Quark found, was owned by famous Bajoran leader Lee Nollis. But the Bajoran government doesn't want to risk a rescue. The provisional government is showing cracks, and Bajor is in desperate need of a leader. We're starting to hear rumblings of things falling apart on Bajor, which frequently happens after an occupation like that. And Kira thinks that Lee Nollis could be the leader that helps solidify the government. Then O'Brien calls Odo and Cisco to see that somebody has spray painted a symbol for the Circle, a xenophobic extremist group on Bajor, basically their version of the Klan. And they want to get all non-Bajorans off of the planet and off of the station. And Odo and Cisco are immediately concerned. It's a story. It's sort of an adversary. It's a story beat that I think makes a great deal of sense when you have instability and a lack of leadership. Certainly xenophobia and that sort of extremist beliefs can easily crop up and be fostered in this. But I don't know if in Space Clan, I don't know what about their choice of spray paint.
Well, they went with safety yellow, so it'll be visible even in those the darkest of nights. So
And on standard definition 4:3 aspect ratio.
Yeah, right.
It really sticks out, but it's not as intimidating as perhaps they were hoping. But in canon, in context, it is certainly something to be concerned about. So in Act 2, we find Sisko playing with the baseball when Dax comes into his office. She confesses that she doesn't like talking about baseball the way Curzon did, which is an interesting wrinkle about the taste changing with the new hosts. Mike, do you remember where Sisko got the baseball?
Yeah, from what was his name? It was in the Rumpelstiltskin episode, and Buck Buckeye threw him the ball.
Yes, well done. If we record an episode twice, you got 2 bites at the apple, and this one you nailed it. But I do think it is interesting that just a little Dax nugget here, that the tastes and interests really do get negotiated through all of the various hosts. And so you might, I can sort of imagine it being a bit of a democracy in there, right? So if she's the 7th host, she's got 3 votes for yes baseball, 3 votes for no baseball, and Dax, as the current host, probably gets the tie-breaking vote on whether or not we are interested in baseball. So Sisko is concerned about the instability on Bajor. Dax already knows about Kira's plan to rescue Lee Nollis. But Sisko is concerned about the Cardassians, but she reminds him that they had already said they released all of the Bajoran prisoners. So we're gonna like go and do the sneaky Robbie kind of a thing. But if you catch us, you shouldn't have been here too. So we're both the bad guys, which I think makes sense. So Sisko gives the nod, as only Avery Brooks can. He then asks O'Brien to come up with a technobabble solution to make the runabout look like a different ship on sensors. So they've all got the plan. There's the nod. Mike, give us the Sisko nod. Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well played. Well played. Later in Kira's quarters, Sisko assigns O'Brien to help. He's a better pilot and knows the Cardassians well. Now, Mike, do you remember how O'Brien knows Cardassians?
Well, clearly he shops there because he's got that sweet, sweet deep V jacket that they were like, you know what, give him a t-shirt. I think originally they went no t-shirt, and Colin Meaney was like, hell no, oh ah. So they gave him that
hell
nice
no,
little,
but they still gave him a very swooping bit of O'Brien cleavage there. But answer the question.
Was it the storyteller? He went down and like interacted with all those friends?
That was on Bajor, and those were Bajorans.
Yeah, right. What was the question you asked me originally?
Wow.
Keith, I forgot how much tech there is to run when I'm doing the OBS.
I asked, how does O'Brien know about Cardassians?
I don't know. Didn't he work? I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Mike, now, even though we have promised our patrons bonus episodes every month, we've only actually recorded one bonus episode
yes, that's
of the
right.
Next Generation.
And it was like this soft pilot of this show, and they what did they do? I don't remember it now. I'm gonna have to go watch. I'm not a patron, so I didn't see. I don't get to rewatch. Stop asking me questions.
O'Brien fought in the Cardassian Wars.
Oh.
And and under Captain Grissom, it wasn't Grissom. I forgot what the captain was.
How dare you?
But on a different ship, he did a lot of deep dark war against the Cardassians. And so when he talks about what Cardassians do to their prisoners, he knows from personal experience. So, which is why he is a good person to send on this mission. Okay, so as they pull out of the station, Kira tells him that she's planning to get Lenalis back or die trying. And O'Brien's like, cool, yeah, let's do that. As opposed to, we're going to get him back or try again tomorrow?
Yeah, well, I mean, they had to raise the stakes. But more importantly, to me, I recognized maybe they upgrade the runabout set, because I want to be in it. Like, it's so much fun. There's all kinds of gazmos and gadgets and gizmos and practical things you can touch and play with and beep and boop. I want to recreate one of those, buddy. What do you say? Let's get our patronage up and let's build one.
I think that's a great plan. And so after you run down that poor sexy predator, hopefully you'll have a gazmo.
Oh boy, we're in trouble. We might have to redo this a third time.
This is terrible.
It's not great. It's definitely not great.
Oh, we're so close to hitting the 500 subscribers, so I can release Wrath of Niner, and this is going to drop down to like 150 after this episode. So, anyway, the Act 3 begins. They're half an hour away when they get detected that they're being scanned. They're hailed. It's time to test O'Brien's fake shields. They pretend to be a Lesepian transport ship called the Martok. I guess they might have saved that name for later, because Martok is a very important person on Deep Space Nine, but Mike hasn't met him yet. This is my favorite part, when I realize how much of the best things about Deep Space Nine Mike has not yet seen.
That's true.
So that's kind of fun. Kira bluffs well, and they get through and arrive at Cardassia 4. She says they're bringing over some stuff for a gull, and makes up a gull on the fly. But apparently, the person on the other side was gullible enough to believe. So they scan the labor camp and discover that there are actually a dozen Bajoran prisoners there, as opposed to just Lee Nollis. And we find out that they can't beam up more than 2 at a time. So they're going to have to land, which is good, because it justifies all of that awesome actual, practical set. We arrive at the labor camp, and the prisoners are appropriately throwing rocks into baskets. Right on the surface, they're just going to pick up a rock and put it into a basket, and somehow in the future, in the Empire of Cardassia, whatever rock they're putting into a basket is worth risking the instability of the quadrant and owning all of these prisoners, whatever. So Kira and O'Brien walk up to the perimeter. O'Brien puts on a silly voice, and they pose as a prostitute and a pimp. The guard, of course, wants to hire her and lets her through the force field. And she naturally beats him up, and we shoot the guards. So we begin a big ol' firefight here in the canyon. They find Lee Nollis and run off with the prisoners. And the firefight looks so much better, because they're not on the cave set on Paramount. We're actually in a real quarry, and it allows them the space. Because honestly, I think a lot of it is just having the distance between the people, that you can have a more realistic firefight, because you're not 12 feet away from your adversary.
But also, listen, this brings up a little bit of a wormhole. I know how you're going to try to explain it, because I think we talked about this last time. O'Brien's like too good of a shot for being an engineer. But he did fight in a war, so I guess you could say that the phaser has like some sort of auto lock, but the bad guys miss a whole bunch.
Well, yeah, because they're Star Wars bad guys. They're stormtroopers. But yeah, O'Brien, look, he was in war. Like, O'Brien is a war vet. Okay. And he has this is not his first phaser battle. He's got a sort of a dark past. It's so nice, like, on a practical set, when you can, like, there's stuff to hide behind and jump off, up, and climb and stuff. It just looks better. The whole fight sequence was one of their better ones because of that. I think it's not only the best one we've seen on Deep Space Nine thus far. I think it's the best one we've seen on Star Trek so far. Because Next Gen was not known for its immensely exciting phaser battles.
I'm thinking back to like that episode we watched with Mike from Breaking Bad with like the two warring clans that were stuck on the planet endlessly warring, and how bad all of those action sequences were compared to like this one, which is just like an opening sequence.
So much better.
Yeah.
So much better. So they run off with Lee Nollis. The four of the prisoners stay behind and sacrifice themselves to help Nollis get away, and they have to leave them behind, thus showing how important Lee Nollis is even to the other prisoners. So that happens. We begin Act 4 with them arriving back at the station, and Bashir beams Nollis straight to the infirmary. Kira rushes to Sisko's office to explain what happened, and they discover that dun dun dun, Sisko is already on a Zoom with Gul Dukat. Dukat surprisingly announces that the Cardassian High Command has issued a formal apology for still having the prisoners of war. They're not in trouble. They're apologizing.
Yeah.
And that they're sending the rest of the prisoners straight back to Bajor. And they're both surprised and suspicious, as one would think. So in the infirmary, Bashir has patched up Lee Nollis. Bashir is all curious about the old battles, and we begin a little bit of the showing the interest that Bashir has in old-timey battles. That's going to come up later, but you don't need to know that yet, Mike.
Okay.
But Nollis doesn't want to talk about it. And later, Nollis and Sisko chat in the new Replimat set, because if you're going to do one scene, you might as well do two. We spent all that money. And a bunch of Bajorans gather. Then Minister Jaro shows up in the form of the not yet canceled Frank Langella. And he, first off, is super pissed at Kira because she risked a war to rescue Nollis. The crowd has grown, trying to get Nollis to speak. Apparently, he's the Justin Bieber of Bajor. And Jaro, though pissed, is not going to miss an opportunity to talk to the crowd because, of course, he is a politician.
You know, hold on a second. Screw you, Frank Langella. First of all, screw you for being a creep. Let's get that, yes. But screw you, number two. This is like a really kind of good part. You bring this sort of grandeur to it and really ground it, and it's an important high stake kind of political part. Why you gotta act like Star Trek's beneath you? Don't credit me. My kids just told me to do it. Like, you're fine in it. It's fine. It's a great go get over yourself.
Well, I don't know if his idea of doing it was that Star Trek was beneath him. I hope it wasn't. I mean, come on. It was in Masters of the Universe. Let's not get too high and mighty.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What other reason would you go uncredited?
I mean, certainly, like, it's a vanity thing to do that. It's just it could have been many different flavors of vanity, but
okay.
Anyway, Masters of the Universe also featured another future Star Trek star, but we'll talk about that later. So Sisko brings Nollis into his quarters, and Nollis just wants some privacy and to be left alone. And he says, "This morning I was a slave, and tonight I'm a hero," which was, I think, pretty reasonable reaction to the experience that he's at. I think I would probably want a nap and a shower and not to be have 1,000 people going around me. But Sisko fills him in that everybody wants him to be the new leader of Bajor. And Nollis does not look thrilled at the prospect. And late at Quark's, we go and we see Rom and Quark dividing up the profits. Naturally, Quark is screwing him as they count their money. Now, Mike, do you remember what they're counting?
Yes, these are gold-plated Latinum bars.
Gold-pressed Latinum. Well played.
Yes. And their ratio appears to be. Now, let's not forget, this is already, Rom has already negotiated a bit more of a salary when he tried to kill his brother, because he earned some more respect for him at that point. And so God knows what the ratio was before, because it begins this scene, they're 1 to 6.
Mhm.
1 for you, 6 for me, and then ends the scene since Rom complained. 1 for me, 7 for me, 1 for you. So not great negotiating on Rom's part.
No, I didn't go well. But of course, like I wonder, right? If Rom is an employee, right? Did he invest in the bar, or is he just an employee at the bar? Why would he get 50-50? Did Quark buy the bar? These are all good questions. See, we're all supposed to be like, feeling for Rom here, getting screwed by Quark, but we don't know what the financial situation was setting it up. He's an employee, he's not an owner. But there it is. Just a thought. But of course, the show's perspective is Quark is screwing him. Rom leaves, then Quark is attached by a bunch of weirdos in robes and masks. And they brand his forehead with the symbol of the circle. So what did you feel about our folks in masks here?
I'm glad he only got branded, because when they came in, it felt very, it was like a mix between Eyes Wide Shut. So I was like, oh boy. They were going to cart him off to a holosuite, am I right? Or it gave me some anonymous vibes. So, I thought we might get like a kidnapping scenario, but they're still in the, we just want our voices heard. We want to create sort of a scary vibe with this this organization. So
they were focusing on branding in both sense of the word.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Well done.
But yeah, I mean, it's another sort of oblique reference to the Klan, I think. With the hood, the sort of like anonymous element of it, and the sort of theatricality of it.
I kind of wish that they hadn't been able to fix him so quick, because it would have been, I think, more effective to have Quark walking around with that brand for a while.
For sure. And I would imagine if this was our theatrical thing that we're going to do, they would have to know that there's like, it's a 30-second thing. Literally nobody may ever even see it. But that's what happens. And we begin Act 5. And Bashir helps Quark heal while everyone else watches and tries to figure out what's happening. They fill Nahlas in on the circle, and Quark quite reasonably wants to sue. But Sisko shuts him down because everyone treats Quark bad. Kira then tells Lee Nahlas he needs to speak up against the extremists. In Sisko's quarters, we get a little update on the Jake situation, and we find out that Jake's date stood him up because her father, the date's father, would not let her date a non-Bajoran. So xenophobia is taking over Bajor like it's Florida. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, this is a part of a bigger story, but like, this is I like this. I don't like this moment, but I think this moment is important because of the obvious ties into the real world, and it's a very sort of showing. I think sometimes the emotional stakes and the sort of doom of a situation can be expressed well in these smaller stakes sometimes of whether it's racism or xenophobia or whatever. A kid not having a date is somehow like a little bit more heartbreaking and really gets to you in a way that like maybe the branding feels more theatrical. This feels very human to me.
Yeah, I apologize for the analogy I'm about to make but I find sometimes, so here's an example. I find that sometimes it's also more emotionally
resonant.
Not resonant. Well, yes, but personal in a way that it's bite-sized. You can capture it. You can conceptualize it. I'll give you an example. Often, I often find myself watching like World War II documentaries, and I find that the sort of sweeping, large-scale filming of like labor camps and things of that nature, death camps, just so overwhelming to my emotional core and my conceptualization of like how human beings can act that I almost have to like desensitize to it. Whereas if it's just a one-on-one interview about a person who was a kid who lost her family and had to run away, or it's the smaller stories that I'm able to just kind of pay a little bit more emotional attention because I don't have to kind of retreat. And I find that they learned lessons here I think from the first season where, hey, you know, some of those smaller two-hander episodes where we shrunk down the emotional stakes into a more compartmentalized scene were really effective, well, especially towards the back half of the season. So what they did here is they've got the large picture, the large scale story they're telling about the political sort of xenophobia and things, but then took this one scene, this very interesting moment, to zoom in and tell it on the small scale. And I think that doing both in juxtaposition with one another is actually a really effective way to tell the story.
No, I think that's I think you're making the same point that it really is. Sometimes it's the details, sometimes it's the minutia that allows this sort of a thing to be digestible enough to have true empathy that isn't overwhelmed by the larger picture. I think that's a very good way of putting it.
And as we've said before, these two actors have incredible chemistry with one another. And so every time they use them to kind of tell a story, and also just like the stories about growing up, it's also just Jake's tale of his journey, which is a really specific journey. Like, what's it like to grow up in a scenario like this? Really, really cool and powerful. I love every time they're on screen together.
Yep, agreed. Then Cisco gets a call from a ship that was headed for the Gamma Quadrant and discovered a Bajoran trying to stow away. Turns out Lee Nollis was trying to make a run for it and was going to go into the Gamma Quadrant and disappear forever. And we find out in I think a great scene here that the legend of Lee Nollis was all just a misunderstanding. Full off, go back one, cool alien effect.
Oh, totally.
For the captain going like, we definitely should have seen that again.
Yep.
There's two alien effects here that are so good and just one-offs.
Yep.
Never even seen on screen. It was just shown on the iPad.
Also, I thought this was a really cool just like beat that maybe could have very easily ended up on the cutting room floor, but I think it was such a great performance moment that they put it back in the cut, where it just kind of gives us that, because he just does a stretch and kind of a deep breath before he goes back to work. He just had a moment of being a dad, and he has to bounce right back into being the head of the ship. And you realize that, like, though he's very good at his job, it is a backbreakingly all the time 24/7 difficult job. And I loved him taking that deep breath and just realizing that the pressure weighs always, and it was a cool beat.
Yeah, well, and it's sort of back-to-back beats of showing humanity, showing vulnerability, and you're right. Not the least of which how beautifully lit this whole set is. So anyway, Nollis explains that the legend is just a misunderstanding, and that the legend took a life of its own when he was really just a regular dude. That it all started with he killed a Cardassian general, but it was all just sort of happenstance, and people thought he was this badass, and he wasn't. And he became a symbol, and he allowed the symbol to continue for the good of Bajor while they were going through the occupation, but he doesn't want to continue it. And Cisco says that Bajor needs him to keep it up. A lie is still a legend here, and that he says legends are as powerful as any proof, which is true. I mean, the symbolism is sometimes more important than the actual event because it holds power. And the next morning on Ops, as Mike fights with screenshots, that's all right. We're gonna get there. Lee Nollis and Minister Jaro show up, and Nollis has been given a fancy new title they invented for him, a Navark.
Come on.
And we see that Nollis has decided to play his part.
Hold on just a minute. Let me see if I can't get back to these. It's so sad. Come on, OBS. Be better.
I believe.
Okay, we're getting there. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
This is him telling his story still. Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what's great about this too is that I thought the tale was it was a really well written monologue, because not only does he feel sort of like he didn't earn his reputation, but more so you get he had a recognition of the humanity of the Cardassians, where here's this guy who he's hunting or they're fighting against, but he was just like taking a bath and he was nude, and the look on his face when he shot him was embarrassment. I thought that was such a human moment for the captor to be recognizing about his captee, or the captee to be recognized about his captor, and how the shame he felt in killing this person, and that becoming what his legend is based on, I thought was, once, like you had mentioned, a really nice human moment written in, really well written episode. The dialogue is less clunky than sometimes we've seen.
Yeah. And, and in that screenshot you had right there, the lighting and depth of focus there, so good.
Yeah, I had a bit of a question about why they never, because it is a dialogue there. Ben has a lot to say, but they kept him out of focus the whole shot, and it's a long shot. We talked about it before, and you explained to me that you think that was directorially chosen so that we keep our focus in the foreground, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to note that it is an interesting. It's an interesting shot to watch because it's very stylized.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very arty as opposed to cutting back and forth. And it was, I actually liked it. So, anyway, Leonalis and Mr. Jaro show up. Then, of course, Jaro announces that Nahlis has been appointed the new Bajoran liaison officer and will replace Kira. And that brings us to our dun 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 to be continued. Mike, we are not just in a 2-parter. We are in a 3-parter.
Whoa.
Here on Deep Space Nine. You said you wanted to be more serialized, and boy, are you getting your dream. Now it is time for your nightmare. In, of course, everybody's favorite segment, Mike's Star Trek Vocab Quiz.
And now it's time for Mike and Deglio's Star Trek Vocabulary Quiz.
All right, Mike, what is a navark?
A navark is this new thing that Leonalis is, which basically is like you're a somebody, and so he's now going to be that and the liaison to the station.
Okay, and next up, this one's hard. What are roulotte seeds?
Well, that's the things they're planting in the holes that they're digging in the camp in the beginning? Question? No,
very much wrong. They were mining roulotte seeds when she was bluffing the Cardassian and saying that she was delivering roulotte seeds, which are seeds of some sort. All right, folks. I think it's time to come along home, Mike.
Absolutely. That was well timed, Keith, by the way.
Okay. Here we are. You know what? We talked about the show getting and expanding its set, and here we are. We have expanded our set. We are going to be doing the AlamarEmmys from Quarks.
Yes.
Because we did it on 10 Forward for season 1 because look, we were trying to make the connections between the popular show, The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, but now we got the note. We got the note from Mike Propeller. It is time to make our stories more Deep Space Nine specific. So this is where we're going to tip one out.
Me and my boy.
Get some 2 Rockaginos, maybe a black hole. And here we are in Quarks. And we begin, as always, Mike, were there any wormholes in the plot?
Well, we talked a little bit about in the beginning. I talked about O'Brien's shot in the face. The whole like the pew pews doesn't always make a lot of sense to me. But that isn't just Star Trek here. That happens in Star Wars. That happens in all future things, like how the weapons work and stuff. Not specifically making sense. But the only other thing I would say, and I think you agree, I don't quite understand. Clearly, they wanted to keep this guy prisoner because they didn't want to give him back because they knew what kind of a war hero symbol he would be. So, why not, keep him in a prison or, hide him somewhere? Or all of these prisoners. They just have them out in, a work camp that clearly can be found. And having them remove rocks, that seems, unnecessary. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense. On top of, it was way too easy to rescue them. She made it seem like it was this suicide mission they're going on, and then they were just beep, a couple pew-pews and they're out. And there was like all it took was like one hot chick to like get the force field down. It just seemed a little easy.
Yeah, no, for sure. That I think that they could have done a whole episode about rescuing Lee Nollis and having a big battle and a big, subterfuge and breaking in. Like that would have been a great. I think that probably would have been a better season 1 opener. I think all the information that we got in this could have been told in 5 minutes, right? About what's going on with Bajor, this, that, the other thing. And we could have ended this with the rescue of Lee Nollis and the reveal that he's a fake. But we could have spent 30 minutes on, I think that would have been a much better season opener. Yes, in terms of the wormhole of it all, the Cardassians' reason for all of this doesn't make any sense to me, right? We're in the future. Their whole empire, they have warp drive, right? Of what use are 12 people picking up rocks and putting them into baskets? What are the rocks? Can't they be mined in a different way? What, like, if they're just right there on the surface, like what is the purpose of all of that, right? And what difference is 12 people going to have anyway? And if you wanted to hide Lee Nollis, kill him. It's the Cardassians. They do that stuff all the time. There's literally no reason to have him stay alive, right? If they're afraid of him, kill him. If they're, so that does sort of beg the question. Well, why didn't they? Why? So maybe there are answers coming as to why they were bothering to do all of this. But certainly as a standalone episode, I'm like, huh? But yes, that would be my rewrite.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the not kill him thing, I don't know still where Gul Dukat sits in all of this. And I know we're always very skeptical of him, but we see him in this episode, and he's trying to lead us to believe that we didn't know, and maybe there's some truth. Maybe he is trying to barter. Maybe they were going to use him as like a bargaining chip or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's some political reasons to keep him alive. So that didn't like bug me too bad. But anyway, all right. So that's our wormholes, I think.
Okay, Mike, what was your best moment?
I definitely changed. Last time we recorded this episode, I thought it was his big monologue, which I did love. I still do love. But you know what? And I think you might bring this up too. I can't remember what you said, to be honest. I don't either. The moment we talked about the most this episode, where they zoom in and it's Jake and Sisko discussing sort of the themes of the plot, but really about a girl and not being accepted. And it's not about that. It's not really about the girl not being able to go out with him. It's the dad or the reasons. And it doesn't need too much depth. We don't need to discuss it too much. Doesn't need long of a scene. We get what we're getting from it. I just thought it was beautiful. I love every time they have a scene together.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think the monologue where he reveals that, or Lee Nollis reveals that it was all a fake, that's a great scene. I thought you know what? I think from the standpoint of like, what do I think is the best moment? Yes, I think it's a father-son moment there. I think it's just sort of the showing the humanity and the vulnerability late at night. But just for the sake of being contrary, I'm going to go with the pew pew scene because it was a kick-ass, by Star Trek standards, phaser fight. And we haven't really had that before. I thought it looked great. I thought it, the effects looked great. The setting looked great. They did some rolling around and some zappy zap, and that was fun. And I like that as a little thing to have in your season 2 opener. So that would be my best moment, just for fun. So I think there's only one more thing to do, and that is to hand out some self-sealing stem bolts, Michael.
So I have no problems with the episode. I thought the episode's good. I think the performances are good. I think there was no big twisty twists. They raise a lot of good questions. I think they introduce sort of a big bad in the, what's the name of the cult?
The Circle.
In the Circle. I think they introduce an interesting character in Lee Nollis. I think they introduce a cool twist at the end, a cliffhanger with what's going to happen with Kira. Is she off the ship? How's it going to play out? The Gul Dukat stuff left great questions. Great. It set the table very nicely for a few multiple plot threads. Very cool. The issue you get when you do that, when you set the table a bunch, is that it loses a bit of a focus. It's not about one thing, and so it's hard to sort of really take too much out of it. It's obviously part of a larger arc, which is what I asked for. So I don't have any qualms with it. It wasn't edge of your seat in any sort of way. And the thing I will say is that I'm glad we're getting a Deep Space Nine specific plot, but there are a couple threads that feel a little samey, in that we got another politician on the ship who's potentially taking advantage of a situation that's arisen for their own political gain, which we kind of just got at the end of last season.
Right. There's some overlap there between Jaro and Wynn.
Yeah, and also the sort of like, we already had a plot thread earlier in season 1 about someone's reputation and how that reputation can be used as a political weapon in some ways to rally the troops. We kind of already did that in season 1. So there's a little samey vibes, but things can exist multiple times. I'm not thrown off by those. I'm just saying they're not new ideas to the series, and so I'm not overly interested in that stuff, but I am in where we're going. So that all said, I think it's a good table setter episode. So I'm not going to throw it a ton of self-sealing stem bolts, because we're going to have to get where we're going, see if they stick to the landing. So I'm going to say 70.8 self-sealing stem bolts.
70.8. Okay.
Is that close to what I said last time?
Well, we had a bit of a drift, right? We lost 1.2 stem bolts.
That feels right.
As we rebuilt the episode. So, they break, using them. So we shouldn't have to reassemble an episode. That way we're not hemorrhaging self-sealing stem bolts. We
shouldn't have to fix them. If the stem bolts are self-sealing, you shouldn't have had to fix them in the first place, but here we are.
That's true. Unfortunately, our brains were self-sealing.
Yeah.
It's actually going to shed a couple too for me. Talking about it, because less a judgment of this episode and more really thinking through what the episode could have been. Right? That there are some repeated beats here. There was a lot of what felt like filler, right? Because we have the vandalism with the circle, and then we have the branding. Well, yes, there is an escalation to some extent, but not enough of an escalation to repeat the beat. You have, you're setting up Jaro as the, I don't know, is this a bad guy? Is it a good guy? Whatever, as the political minister. Well, we did that with Kai Wynn, I thought, in a much more interesting way at this point. But we don't really know where it's going. It probably could have all been done in one scene as opposed to 2 or 3. And so we could have told the impending doom of the circle and the instability on Bajor, rising xenophobia and hate and the crumbling government. We totally could have done that faster and allowed us to have a much more satisfying rescue, right? It's the season opener. We're going to do a rescue, right? We're going to do a death-defying, crazy James Bond rescue. Well, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right? Let's do it. And we didn't. That whole sequence took about 6 minutes of a 46-minute episode. And the rest of it felt much more like filler. We didn't need 3 scenes with Lee Nollis expressing reservations, right? Just catch him leaving, do the monologue. So, I think you set up what's going on in the first 5 minutes. You set up the doom, you set up the peril on Bajor. We have a solution. Let's go rescue it. We spend the next 30 minutes on a really exciting, cool rescue sequence. Then the last 5 minutes, we've arrived at the station. We got away. We did it. That's great. And right then, oh, wait, I'm not real. And that's how we end the episode. And that's a much more interesting way to do that and structure that.
And also, we only got one little scene of Odo being he doesn't even talk about he's just well, this is usually a safe area. But then in the very next scene, the circle is able to get to Quark. So we didn't hear
Well,
anything
and-
about their plan to address the circle.
And why wasn't Odo a part of the rescue? I mean, who would
Yeah.
be really useful in that would be Odo. Yeah, so it feels like there's nothing, like you said, there's nothing wrong with this episode. There's nothing bad about this episode, but I do feel like there's just a lot of opportunities missed. And, this is why it's a season 2 episode and not a season 5 episode, because it didn't have the gravitas yet that it got later. And if this were a season 5 episode, it probably would have been structured exactly like I said.
Yeah. Okay.
And so this felt a little bit too tied to the sort of slow, talkier version of Trek. And so it's fine, but I just wish that it had been the episode that I just wrote in my head.
Yeah.
So
okay, fair.
for that, you get 71 self-sealing stem bolts. So, Mike, next week, we have the thrilling continuation of this story in an episode called The Circle.
Yeah, okay.
So,
getting right to it then.
Unless this crashes and we have to do this episode a third time,
I don't
we will
think so.
see you
I think
back
we're okay.
next week with Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 2, The Circle. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/K&M, spell out that, and get all of our fun nonsense. But other than that, just, give us a like, give us a subscribe, stay here on the feed. And we will see you back next week. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike. Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/K&M.